Hello and welcome. My name is Chris Skinner, Global Delivery Manager for VMware Education Services. Today I'd like to talk about a new exciting development project that VMware has been working on to provide a lab environment to our students initially and others to follow. This project is called Project NE and it stands for Next Gen Education Environment. So today I'd like to talk a little bit about what this project is going to provide, how VMware Education Services plans to leverage this new solution, and then I'll give you a quick demonstration about what it looks like and how the students will access this lab environment for you. So we'll start off in the agenda item with a little bit about what the use cases and what the go-to-market strategy is for VMware and our education services with Project NE. And then I'll talk a little bit from a high-level perspective, a little bit about what the NE components are that actually are using this development solution to deliver those labs environments. So let's first talk a little bit about what some of the design features and some of the use cases that we've built into this new project. Starting off with, it is a software as a solution environment. It is based completely on VMware technologies. So we are leveraging the likes of vCloud Director, vSphere. We've got some other homegrown solutions using Groovy and Grails and many other products that VMware offers. It is designed to be run on any cloud provider. In addition to that, it is completely HTML web-based. That means that we will be able to access this lab environment on any device using any modern browser on any operating system. There will be no need for any additional software components like ActiveX or Flash or any Microsoft Silverlight or any of those additional solutions. There will be no RDP technology necessary for this as well. Users will have complete control of their virtual machines. They'll have power cycle capabilities, the ability to shut them down, the ability to access or mount ISO images for additional software. We'll have remote control and remote shadowing capabilities built into this as well. Auditing and logging is also another key feature to this. That'll be an element that we'll use in future releases and future use cases, but we'll actually be able to see what that user has actually done within a lab environment or within a particular given module. In addition to this, we've designed this software platform to be multi-tenant capable. So although we are delivering initially labs for the education services world, we can certainly extend this out to other additional tenants that can leverage this lab environment. Full support for help and chat services will also be implemented in this so that if a user or a student gets stuck on a particular lab, we can reach out to that individual or that student can reach out to us and request some help to move forward. It is designed to be a single sign-on solution. For VMware Education Services, that'll be through our LMS system or MyLearn. Users will log on to the MyLearn environment. They will authenticate after they've been enrolled or entitled to a particular lab environment. They will no longer need to log in again. In the future release, we plan to also build some geo-awareness to this. The long-term plans are to make this available in specific geographic regions. We will build into the capability to recognize where that user is coming from so that we can route them to the appropriate geo site so that they'll be able to access their lab environment from a infrastructure that's much closer to them, and that'll help on bandwidth issues and so forth. There'll be many, many more features coming in this product as we extend the use case and the functionality of the Project NE environment. So let's talk a little bit about where we are with use cases and go-to-market strategy. Out of the blocks, VMware Education Services will have their first use case will be something called Extended Labs Capabilities. This will provide a value add to our students who take our classes. So envision a student who has attended an ILT course. And at the end of that ILT course, we want to offer them some additional lab time as a post-class offering. So Project NE will give, upon course completion or class completion of that individual student, access to that same lab environment for 30 days or 30 hours, whichever expires first. And that'll be 30 hours of active work time. So the individual will have the ability to go back and revisit those labs, go back and practice a feature, perhaps use it to prepare for a VCP certification or whatever exam environment they want. They simply might want to test a feature or function without impacting their own production environment. This will give them their own environment in which they can attempt to do these kinds of things. It will be very helpful for the instructor community as well as the field for proof of concepts, practice, prepare for an upcoming course. So all these features will become very handy from that particular lab environment. Hands-on labs is another functionality that, although isn't exactly education services based, will be extended to our students as well. These are the VMware Labs that are available every single year. We will provide a way in which our students can access those same said hands-on labs. So what's happening is we are working very carefully and very closely with the tech marketing folks to provide this lab environment so that they can do these very short, purpose-built labs that are designed to be very short in duration, 60 to 90 minutes, that is intended to talk about each of the products within the VMware family, or the ability to exploit a particular feature or functionality of a given product. Not unlike the extended labs environment, these labs will also have embedded lab guides within the interface. So the lab guides will be right there for them to be able to use it, as well as the ability to move forward on those items as well. We will provide links also within this environment to other class offerings so that a student can potentially be routed to the right course if they want to take a much longer approach to learning. Okay, now that we've talked a little bit about the use cases and the elements and how we plan to leverage this particular platform, let's take a quick look at some of the high-level components or the high-level architecture of what this platform, this Project Knee platform, actually looks like. From there, we'll move into a demonstration and give you a look at what this interface actually looks like, what a student would see, and how they would operate and function within this environment. So from a high-level perspective, let's take a look at the three building block layers that define what Project Knee is all about. At the start is the front end. This is the interface or the user portal that the individual student and user will use to gain access to the Project Knee environment. For education services, that front-end portal will become MyLearn, our LMS system. So not unlike a student that has registered for a course that belongs within VMware Education Services, the student will access this same Project Knee environment through a familiar portal that they're already using. The provisioning engine will take that request to access that environment, coupled with the entitlement that has been granted to that student, and it'll package it into a secret token that we will then turn around and pass on to the vCloud Director and the vSphere infrastructure, the underlying vSphere infrastructure, and allocate to that user or that student a vApp specific to them based on that entitlement. The student will then have an opportunity, again, as I said, to work through 30 days or 30 hours for the extended labs and have that capability to revisit all of those labs again. So now that we've looked at the high-level aspects of the Project Knee infrastructure and how the layers work, let's take a quick look at the demonstration of what that interface would look like and how a student would navigate around that environment. So as most of you are familiar with this interface here, this is our LMS system or our MyLearn Education Services portal, web portal here. An individual user or student who attends one of our ILT classes will, upon completion of that class for the ICM and the Fast Track currently in a 5.0 version, there's newer versions coming, the student will receive upon completion of that class, when the operations folks close that class out, they'll receive an email notifying them that they'll be able to enroll into the extended lab environment. So once a user has logged into this environment, you'll see over here in the My Enrollments link, when we click on that, the user will click that link, and that link will take them to the enrollments that are entitled to them. Now, depending on whether the user has ever actually started this particular lab before or it's a newly provisioned lab to them, it'll either say begin if it's brand new, or it'll say continue if they are revisiting or coming back to this lab to continue forward on it. So the user will click on the continue button. And again, it'll list the extended lab as a class offering. Ignore the single day. That's just a placeholder. Time is managed and kept within the Project Knee platform. So they'll see that when they go into the Project Knee environment. So at this point, the user will now, of course, click on Continue with this course. And an interface window will open up, or a new interface window will open up. There may be some information regarding the tool tips, if you will, some navigation techniques as this lab is spinning up. Remember that we are continuing an already spun up lab. So depending on the time frame, they can expect that lab to spin up immediately or not. The user will look at these tool tips that are available to them, and then once he closes those out, he'll have his desktop interface here. The nice thing is everything is contained within the same desktop interface here. And of course, it's very clean and laid out nicely. In the center, we see the console window for one of the virtual machines. On the left-hand side, we have the consoles tab window. And this window shade, if you click on it and pull it out, will show you thumbnails of each of the virtual machines. So in this particular instance here, if I click on the ESX01 thumbnail, I will see a console window that will give me direct console access to that virtual machine, the ESX server in this case. This is particularly helpful, especially when you have classes where maybe a student has disabled the service console interface and can no longer manage it. The benefit here is we don't need PuTTY to get back into that. The student will have direct console access to that. And again, you can see by clicking on these thumbnails, we're just simply toggling between each of the desktop interfaces. Again, we can also click on the float button here. If we click on the float button, a user can actually move that panel or slide that panel around to wherever they want to position it if they feel like they want to move it. We also can adjust the size of the panel by simply grabbing the side and pulling it to its desired size. Clicking on the consoles tab again will collapse that. Across the top here, we see that there's support for some of the social media in addition to identifying who the user is. So if they want to share this lab environment via Facebook or perhaps Twitter or LinkedIn, we have social media capabilities built into this so long as their profile contains that information as well. You'll also notice a button here that's available for live chat. Now, the live chat functionality will give the user the ability to reach out to a support personnel if they get stuck on a particular lab. So if they can't move forward on the lab, they simply enter the information and a live individual will respond to them and walk them through. We'll have remote control and remote shadowing capabilities from that support personnel. In addition to that, there is a help button. Help button will provide them some additional support options, a speed test if they are on a high latency environment. We could conceivably make a test. If they need some email support, we can send it out generally within 24 to 48 hours. Lastly, we have a community forums link as well, as we saw previously. We have our privacy laws. We are required to put in the privacy information. VMware does not use any of the user's profile information for marketing purposes. Speaking of the profile, when we click on that, you can see that the individual user can input various pieces of information in here, even change their language preference. So depending on the localized version of the particular lab or lab environment, including the lab guide, we can actually alter the interface through the HTML to an environment that would be more language appropriate for that particular individual. So for example, if I change it to Chinese, and I save that change and then refresh the screen, you'll notice that all of the interface is in here. When I reload the screen here, we'll see all of the interface comes up with, where relevant, Chinese characters in here. So that obviously will help a great deal. And of course, the lab guides themselves would also need to be, as you can see in the right panel here, will also need to be translated for those individuals. So that's a feature that is available, but will need some work. So the English, we'll switch back here and be able to navigate going forward. Once again, we'll do a reload or refresh the screen on this. And at that point, we'll be back to our English environment once again. And you'll see that we have the social media information down here at the bottom where we can fill in our Twitter and our LinkedIn, share information. We can even put an avatar in here if we want to share that information as well. Logout capabilities at the top of the screen. And of course, down here at the bottom, we have the power operations that are available, the ability to mount ISO images. We can shut down, Control-Alt-Delete for those that are relevant, login capabilities for those particular individuals. And you'll also notice that under every console window, we always provide the login ID and the password so that the user is always aware of what it takes to log in and access that. That oftentimes can be forgotten or misplaced. In the bottom right-hand corner, we always, in the user's vision, we always have the displayed time remaining. That is the active time that is remaining for the individual. So if in fact they end their session for the day or they go idle for more than 10 minutes, we'll stop that time. And that way that individual won't continue to consume the time. Now, also from the lab manual panel, we have embedded within each of these environments a full copy of the lab manual that they would have otherwise received in class. And these have all of the steps and all of the instructions, including all of the information, naming conventions, login IDs and passwords, IP settings, all of the relevant information to continue to move forward. In addition to, we have the ability to jump right to a particular lesson. So the table of contents permits us to go directly to a lesson. And we also always have a pictorial diagram of the network infrastructure so they can see how the virtual machines are actually connected to each other. Where the lab guides are longer than the individual window will allow, we'll have scrolling capabilities. And again, we get to the bottom of that particular task, and either at the bottom or at the top of this panel, we can click on the arrow, which will allow us to move forward to the next task. And the student will just continue to move through the exercises as they do the labs. And again, as I said before, the user will, if they leave this lab, they will always come back and be left off exactly where they were. So at this point, there's two options here, the exit option, as you can plainly see, as well as the end option if they are completely done within this configuration. So that particular interface here concludes the demo portion of our lab environment. Again, if the student clicks on end, then that will, of course, complete this lab. It will terminate that lab, and they will no longer have entitlement access to that particular lab environment. Now that we've taken a look at the actual live environment and how a student would access that environment, I'm giving you a link here to additional information by simply going to the communities forum. And within that forum, you will find not only other conversations around the Project Neat platform, you will also find an email address which will allow you to reach out for more information. Please feel free, and thank you for your time.